Welcome back to Estate Planning Nightmares and How to Avoid Them. This is the podcast where we talk about the real stories families live through when estate planning is ignored, incomplete, or done right, and what we can all learn from that. And today's episode is a powerful one because we're going to cover both sides of that coin. What happens when planning almost gets done, and then what happens when it's truly in place. If you've ever thought, well, I have a trust, so I'm good, or I'll get to this later, well, this conversation might just change how you think about that. I'm your host, John Braddock, the author of Click Here When I Die and the founder of My Life and Wishes, the Legacy Vault, an online planning and document storage solution created to make things easier for those you love. Joining me today is Kelly Balamuth, an estate planning attorney who has spent decades helping families protect what matters most, both financially and emotionally. Kelly focuses on family protection, wealth preservation, and values-based planning, including planning for blended families, unmarried couples, and individuals navigating major life transitions. She took over her family's law practice in Orinda after graduating from UC Davis School of Law and has been recognized as a super lawyer for over a decade, including being named one of the top 50 women attorneys in Northern California. She serves clients in Walnut Creek, Orinda, and Lafayette, California. And beyond her credentials, what really stands out about Kelly to me is her heart for families and her ability to explain how real people experience the consequences of planning or not. So, Kelly, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to have you on today.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we've known each other for, probably 3 or 4 years or so now. Don't get to talk to you that often because you're in Northern California and I'm in Arizona. But this is a good way to spend a Friday morning for me.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so let me start with this. I always like to begin with the why with attorneys. I mean, there's so many different practice areas of law, right?
Hmm.
Corporate, commercial, real estate, criminal, but estate planning. What can you tell us a little bit about your background? What led you to helping families, and were there other areas of law that you considered?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And actually, it allows me to correct a little bit of thing that you just said. You said I've been doing this for decades. I've really only been doing it for about 7 years, but I've been an attorney for 31 years. And
Oh,
for a
okay.
quarter of a century, I was a trial attorney. When I joined my family's law practice, my father was a personal injury attorney, and so that's what we did. And so I was dragging people into court, but I'd be in a courthouse and I'd have a client who had had like a catastrophe happen or a family member of somebody who had died, and quite often they didn't have estate planning in place. And so I'd see them over in the probate court trying to deal with whatever was going on over there, getting a conservatorship, dealing with probate. And over time, I mean, being a trial attorney, our legal system is designed that two sides come together and they bash together and the truth shoots up out the middle. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But 25 years of that was enough. And so it occurred to me, actually, it was when my father passed away, that maybe I didn't want to be dragging people into court for the rest of my life. So I became an estate planning attorney because it's about keeping people out of court and it's about solving problems before they ever even happen. So that's how I got here. And I love it because I think of estate planning really as like lessening the trauma of any traumatic situation. We have trauma happen all the time in our lives. And actually, the stories I'm going to tell today sort of illustrate this, that you have the traumatic event. If you have the planning in place, you wipe out this whole tail of trauma. You don't even know it might have happened. You can't even maybe appreciate that it's not there, but you've wiped it out. And if you don't have estate planning in place, then, like for instance, you fall incapacitated, somebody's going to have to go to court and get a conservatorship over you. And so now you're like my clients were over in that courtroom, and it's a mess. And so I love being in the space with people. I think estate planning, it's about everybody you love and everything you have, and the fact that we all die someday. And so I like being in that space with people. It's a little bit heavy, but it's also really heart-centered, I guess, in certain ways. So yeah, that's what I'd say about that.
I love
That's how I
that.
got here.
No, that's awesome. As you know, I work with attorneys all across the country. Pretty much all are estate planning attorneys, and I love the backstories where people come from, like yourself. Personal injury, and you spend so many years, going to court and fighting and doing those things, and the proactive nature of estate planning, like you say, is designed to keep family out of court, is designed to not have the fights, not have the arguments. And what people, I think, fail to recognize is if they don't do their planning,
Right.
court will be involved and their family will fight. And as parents can all attest, our kids fought when they were growing up. And they might not fight that much now as adults, but I guarantee you, if you don't have a plan in place and you're gone, they're going to fight over who
Right.
gets what, what's fair, what's equal. And so I just love that. So thank you for sharing your
Yeah.
history, and thanks for correcting me, because I actually didn't know that you were in the trial lawyer. So wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we were talking the other day, you mentioned briefly to me about a story where the planning was started but not fully finished. So I'm going to
Yeah.
guess this is going to be our nightmare story. So I will
Yeah.
let you fill us in on that.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I did planning for this gal. We'll call her Wendy. And she had three adult children. She was in fine health. She was maybe like in her late 60s. And I created a plan for her. Part of what we do at our firm is help people get their trusts funded. Um, should I talk about that a little bit, what that means, or does it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, yeah, so what I review people's trusts all the time. I like to think of a trust kind of like a suitcase that you put your assets in. And the trust says what happens to those assets in your suitcase. But when you first create a trust, you have an empty suitcase. It's very counterintuitive that the most important part of having a trust happens after you sign it, and that is making sure your assets are properly titled. And so when I review people's trusts for them, sometimes they're 5 years old, sometimes they're 30 years old. I'd say about half the time they're not properly funded. They don't have the assets where they should be. What I see, because people give me their whole binders from their prior attorney, is that a lot of attorneys, they'll just give you like a 10 to 12 page letter telling you what to do with your assets once you've signed your trust. And then they give you that letter and they give you the trust and they send you on your way. And then you live with your trust for 20 years, you forget to do it. And so you're living with this thing that's not actually going to work for you if something happens. So part of what we do at my firm is you can either pay us extra to take it off your plate, but most people do it on their own. And we just give a lot of guidance and support. And we kind of like gently hold our clients hostage until it gets done. And that way we know that they have something that's going to work for them. So I created this plan for Wendy, and we were in the process
So let me just
of,
jump in right there for one
yeah,
second, because
yeah,
I sidebar.
yeah,
I like
sidebar.
legal language. So um, to really dumb it down, what that means is if you create my trust for me, I have an empty suitcase, but my
Right.
assets need to be in that suitcase. That means I need to retitle my house into the name of the trust, not my name. I need to change
Exactly. You file a
my
deed transferring your house from you owning it to your trust owning it. You still own it, but
right.
but it's titled to your trust.
Same with bank accounts. You know,
Brokerage accounts.
yeah,
And then
exactly.
there's this whole other part of what I call funding. It's two things. It's retitling some things to the trust, real property, brokerage accounts, things like that. But then if you have retirement assets or life insurance, those do not get titled to the trust, but we deal with beneficiary designations to make sure that the whole thing is working together. So when I'm working with somebody after they've signed their trust on funding, we're really doing two things. We're moving some assets into the trust and changing beneficiary designations on others.
And then for people like me that might 2, 3 years later just go acquire an asset and forget that I'm supposed to do it, you probably have a pour over will on the back end so that we can catch up on those things that fail to
We
get
not
there?
only have a pour over will to catch anything that falls outside, but also I reach out to my clients every 3 years for that exact reason. Have you gotten any new assets? What'd you do with them? That's, yeah, just to sort of make sure that we're keeping it together if
I love it
possible.
when my attorney keeps me accountable.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so tell me about Wendy.
Yeah, so we created a trust for Wendy, and we were in the process of helping her fund her trust, but she was not particularly responsible or responsive, I'll say. She was the daughter, I sort of gathered this, of a wealthy guy, but she was not particularly wealthy, but she still had a number of assets coming to her from her deceased father. And so she had multiple financial accounts. She had stock and dividend accounts. Many of them were stemming from wealth passed down by her father. But over the years, like she never had done anything with them. And it was just sort of like she'd get dividend checks in the mail and she didn't really know where they came from. And I was trying to get her to figure that out so she could move those assets into her trust. And she just never did. And then she died sort of suddenly and unexpectedly. She like got a cancer diagnosis and 2 weeks later she was gone. And so then it really left her kids holding the bag. So she had a trust and we got her house into the trust, but had to hunt for assets. They weren't even sure if they existed or not. And so it's just like an emotionally draining scavenger hunt, really. Um, and so they were in the process of doing that, her three kids, when her middle child, we'll call him Tom, died. And so Tom was one of the heirs of Wendy. In order for Tom, but we're still trying to figure out what the heirs of Wendy get. Tom had no estate planning at all. He had two kids, but he wasn't married. And so now we have to open a probate for Tom so that he can ultimately, really his kids can ultimately receive the inheritance he was going to receive from his mom. So we have this like cascading problem. Um, Ultimately, we're going to open a probate for Tom, and the court is going to order that his share gets placed into a trust for his kids. And then that money is going to come out and go to his kids when they turn 18. They're potentially going to get, millions of dollars, which isn't bad, but having assets handed to you like that at 18 years old can really wreck a life. So it's like problem after problem is sort of falling off of this.
Yeah, if you gave me $1 million when I turned 18, by the time I was 20, I'd be looking for a job.
By the time I was 19, yeah, I would be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So um it's a shame and it's hard to watch, it's making work for attorneys. But the family is like, they're grieving their mom, now they're grieving their brother, now they're, and it's like ballooning legal issues that have to be dealt with, some in court, some by investigation of accounts, things like that. And it's unpleasant.
Wow. And I can only imagine, you're trying to clean this up, but then and find things. And then he passes. Well, now, like you say, that overcomplicates things. So you've got to do a probate on him. We still have to work on all mom's stuff, get that figured out before anything can go over here. And of course, he didn't have a plan. So whatever's left goes to his kids.
Yeah.
Boom. The court's
Yeah.
going to
And
control.
then the other thing is, at least one of the two remaining kids is the opposite of wealthy. She's struggling, and so she could really use the assets. They're there, and ultimately she's going to get them, but it might be a couple years. And so it's like these things intersect with the heirs' lives as well. The situation, it's sort of like two timelines. The timeline that this gal's on is she doesn't have any money. She really needs money. There's this giant pile of money that's sitting there that's going to come to her eventually, but who knows when. And we also don't exactly know what because we can't figure out what these stocks and things are. Um, Another timeline would be that this was all taken care of properly and she'd not be struggling now, she'd have those assets. So
Yeah, it's interesting. As you know, I mean, depending on where you are, depending on how complicated it is, this is complicated on steroids because there's two pieces of it. Um, it's going to take years to get these things figured out versus, the idea of
It
the
would already
trust
be figured
obviously
out by now. Like,
is, and the struggling child would be able to pay off some debt, maybe not get the house foreclosed on or whatever her situation may be.
exactly. Exactly.
um, well, that's sad. And so it'll be interesting to follow back up with you at some point and find out how long that actually took to completion.
Yeah. Call me in 2028 and we'll see where we are.
Wow. And when did this occur? Was it last year?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
2025?
Wendy died, I think, in late 2024. And then Tom died in the middle of last year.
2025. So
So,
yeah, so in 2024, so all last year, it's going to be another 2 years. So it's going to
yeah.
stretch out to
We
three
haven't even
years.
opened the probate yet for Tom. It's on my to-do list.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's like, I it's funny, and I apologize to any attorneys out there if I offend anybody. Um, but I had talked to one attorney, and he was a little bit older, and his philosophy was, I don't do trusts, I only do wills,
Oh.
because that way, when someone dies, the family comes back, and then I get to do probate. And it, I was thinking,
I get to do probate.
I don't think getting to do probate is really like a thrill, and the
No.
estate plan done up front is far less expensive for the family. I mean, you as the
Right.
attorney, sir,
Well, and
might make
often
a little less, but then if you do the probate too, uh,
people come to me for trust administration. So when you have a trust, if you don't have a trust, you're in probate, which is the court process. But the alternative to that, when you have a trust, is trust administration, which is private. You don't have to deal with the court, but a lot of times people will use an attorney to help them with that because there's a lot of little pieces, just to make sure you get it kind of all right. So he could have people come back to him if he did trust too.
oh well, yeah. So what a sad story. I mean, what really strikes me about this story is that the intentions were there,
Yeah.
but intentions without execution or follow through still leaves families vulnerable. And
Yeah.
this is where people underestimate just how fast things can unravel, right?
Right. I think that a lot of people that I talk to, my sense is that they think like estate planning is something they were told they should do, and it feels like a checkbox. And estate planning, it's not just a checkbox. It's like all the details of your life, all the people you love. What do you want to have happen to yourself if you become incompatible? There's just so much, and to get it all together in a plan that like works, which includes having your assets titled properly. It includes making sure that you've like named proper people, all those sorts of things. It's not a checkbox. It's like more than a checkbox. And then once you get it done, it's not a set it and forget it thing. I tell my clients all the time, you don't want to take your plan and throw it in a drawer and forget about it for 20 years. It's what most people do. Most people who come to me with the trust, it's at least 15 years old, uh, which is bad. So, yeah, it's more than a checkbox.
Yeah, exactly. So for any of our audience who are non-attorneys out there, remember, get your planning done, but make sure you continually review it, because so many people. Now, my father-in-law, when he died back in 2013, he did not have an estate plan, but he had a will. And of course, many people know the story that it took us a couple of weeks to actually find it on that massive scavenger hunt, digging through boxes and things. And when we found it, I said to Michelle, I said, honey, I got good news and I have bad news. She said, well, what's the good news? I said, the good news is I found Dad's will. She said, what's the bad news? I said, you have to move to Milwaukee and live with Aunt Jean and Uncle Ed. For those that didn't pick up on that, Michelle and I were in our 50s at the time. Um, that will hadn't been updated since the early 1960s, mid 1960s.
Yeah.
So,
I
oh
love what happened.
man,
I love it. I always think about Aretha Franklin. There's two ways you can have wills, at least in California, but it's just pretty much the same across the country. You either have most wills are witnessed by two people. Like there's specific requirements to make sure that a will works. And so a will has to be like dated and witnessed by two people that are unrelated. Or you can do a holographic will, which is kind of a fun thing that you learn about in law school, which is just it's in your handwriting and it has to be dated and signed. And that's a valid will. So it allows you on your deathbed, if you're alone on your deathbed, to, like make a will. So Aretha Franklin made a holographic will and somebody found it in her couch. And then there was a huge lawsuit from the people I think that weren't mentioned in the couch will. Ultimately, the couch will is what ended up being her will.
uh,
So yeah, it's a good idea. It's a good idea to have your estate planning somewhere where people can find it and recognize it as legitimate.
exactly. Shameless plug. That's why I tell people to keep a digital copy of those things in their legacy vault.
Exactly. Exactly. I love the
Uh,
vault because you can give other people access without control. Like it's a really nice way you can say to my trustees, like, here, log into this if something happens to me, like it's nice.
yeah, exactly. Thank you. And we appreciate you using it with your clients. So we know they're protected and their scavenger hunt will be far less than many
Right.
others.
Exactly. Shortens the
All right.
scavenger.
So, the show's called Estate Planning Nightmares and How to Avoid Them. And I
Yes.
think, we've just addressed that. But what I love also is, a happy story. So you had
Yeah.
mentioned that you also had a very positive or upbeat story about estate planning. Can you share that with our audience?
Yeah, just recently. And I mean, it sort of is a horror story because what happened to this guy was a horror story. But because he had estate planning in place, the horror was limited to the horror story and didn't like have this whole epilogue of nightmare because he had documents in place. So this is a client. He came to me in November, just last November 2025, and we're in January of 26 right now. And we created an estate plan for him. He got a trust. He got incapacity documents like a power of attorney, and specifically for this, an advanced healthcare directive, naming people that could make medical decisions for him and like handle his medical story if he was unable to handle it on his own. So he got all of his estate planning in place, and then his whole family went on a cruise over the holidays. He wasn't the healthiest guy. Like I think he had diabetes and the like, but while he was on this cruise, his kidneys failed. I think he was sort of ignoring his health before he left. I'm not totally positive, but his kidneys failed on a cruise ship. Like I can't think of a bigger nightmare. Like he had like 10% kidney function or something. And so anyway, one of his, I think it was a cousin, um, started just emailing everybody. We started getting emails telling us this had happened. He was reporting to other family members too, but they needed to have the advanced healthcare directive and the power of attorney in order to be able to help him, to help our client. And so we were able to get that to them. We just emailed it to them on the cruise ship. And ultimately, the cousin sent a little video of him being life flighted on a helicopter off of the cruise ship. I don't know where they took him, but he ended up 2 weeks in the ICU. And he's just recently released. So he's recovering. I mean, I think he's not going to be super healthy ever, but the whole thing ended up being, it was a horror, but really seamless because he had these documents in place. We actually, because we just served him so recently, we still had the original documents. We hadn't given them to him yet. So it was really fortuitous that we were able to help. And it was exciting doing this kind of work. You do this stuff, you create documents for people, you help them get their trust funded, you say, call me if there's any problems. But you don't often every day get to like be part of like the hero team or, like taking care of the catastrophe. So that was really horrible, but also gratifying, I guess, to be able to be there and help that way.
And, arguably, it saved his life because what
Oh
would be
yeah.
the outcome had he not had anything
Right.
and no one on the family on the ship? I mean, because of
Right.
HIPAA and privacy and everything else.
Hmm. Right.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Estate
that was
planning
good.
done right. I love it.
Yeah.
Very
And that's
cool.
exactly what it's for, like when you do this kind of work, at least the way I do it, I'm always talking to people about potential horror stories, just like you sort of do on this podcast, but um, to have it go the other way, to put the planning in place, we don't often get to see that, you know. So it was neat.
Yeah,
Reminds me why I do this
exactly.
stuff.
Yeah, my background was, financial services, employee benefits, life insurance, and that for 30 plus years. And you go back in time and, look at all the life insurance contracts that I had set up for people. And of course, you never see the outcome, nor do I want to. I want
Mhm.
people to have life insurance, right? Because it's really important, but I don't want to deliver, a death check either.
Right, right.
But this is kind of the happy side that you know giving someone else a voice when you don't have one via the uh, uh, healthcare directives and POAs.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a beautiful thing. I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah.
Wow. So, if anyone or someone's listening today, if you're healthy, busy, and thinking this can wait, what would you want them to hear, Kelly?
Mm. I
Kind of a
just want,
loaded question,
yeah. Um, it's a tough thing, You're healthy, you're relatively young. Nothing's going to happen. But if something happens, it's a nightmare. And you can, I'm not sure if I said this before we started or after we started, but I really think of estate planning as lessening the trauma of any traumatic situation. And so you can wait, but when that thing happens, it's going to cause a lot of harm that wasn't necessary. Uh, and
Yeah.
doing this kind of work, I know all of us who do this kind of work, we've had the people who have even like come in for planning. We design their plan and then they don't come back for their signing meeting. They cancel their signing appointment. They've got things, they push it down the road. I've had this happen at least twice. And then something happens. And we can't do anything because we don't have anything in place. It happens. It happens. You think nothing's going to happen, and then it does. And then if you don't have a plan in place, it's
Yeah, it's terrible.
traumatic.
And that's the thing, because people do, and as I speak a lot, I talk to groups, and that's one of the biggest arguments. I got time. It can wait. Well,
Mhm.
with your taxes, you have time. April 15th, right?
Yeah.
That's a date certain. We know when that is, and I can wait till the day before to do a plan. Um, but if I just got a diagnosis today of, terminal cancer and I had 2 weeks to live, how do I want to spend those 2 weeks? Do I want to spend them trying to get everything organized before I die and not enjoy my family? Or do I
Right.
want to have the plan done ahead of time? And accidents happen every day, things that
Yeah.
make people incapacitated. And again, not just old people, it's young people. So
It's
everyone
really
needs a
self-care.
plan.
It's really self-care.
I
I
like
mean,
that.
I know that sounds kind of weird and new agey, but it is. There's a great amount of like peace of mind that comes with having planning in place. And then also the way I do planning, it gets you really organized. So you leave the process feeling more organized, which is also pleasant for
Exactly.
most people. I think maybe some people don't want to be organized.
And it's true, just touching on self-care, right? So, I exercise every day. I've walked over 100 miles so far in January. And I do think I do it for my health and do it for my brain and do those kind of things. But I'm always reminded that there was a guy, his name was Jim Fix, Fixx. He was an Olympic runner.
Yep.
And back in I think it was the maybe mid 70s or so, when people were taking up jogging, right? It was becoming a thing that people did. He wrote a book on it to teach people how to do it. And he was out running one morning and died of a heart attack at like 40
Yeah.
years old.
He
So
probably didn't have an estate plan
probably
because he
not.
was 40 years old and super healthy. Yeah.
Right. Look at me. I'm not going to die. Well, we
Yeah.
all are. We just don't know when. Thank God.
Yeah.
Uh, so, what I love about the two stories you shared today is how clearly they show that estate planning isn't about uh, predicting a tragedy, it's about reducing chaos when
Mhm.
life does what life does, right?
Right. Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Kelly, thank you so much for coming on, sharing these stories, and more importantly, for the work that you do for family. Uh, they're powerful reminders that planning is really an act of care for the people that we love. For our listeners, Kelly, if someone has questions, if they're in your area, they want to reach out, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah. I'm actually in the process of rebranding my firm. And so I have my new website up. My new firm name, which I haven't completely stepped into yet, is California Trust and Legacy. And so you can go to californiatrustandlegacy.com and see everything you might need to know about me. And from our website, if anybody ever wants to chat with me, you can make a free 15-minute appointment and get on my calendar. So that's a good way to reach out. I'm a California attorney. I only practice in California, but I practice all over the state.
That's awesome.
I serve people on Zoom like we are here if you're far away.
That's terrific. And again, 15 minutes for, I mean, not to, make you too busy, Kelly, but if someone's in another state, but you just have a question. Um,
Probably don't call me from another state because I can't answer unless you have a question about California, because
there
I'm
we
not
go.
qualified to talk about other states.
There
It
we
would be
go.
malpractice for me to answer your questions about Ohio or Minnesota or whatever.
Exactly. And as Kelly mentioned, it's California Trust and Legacy.com. But to make it super easy for you all, I'm going to post her contact information below in the show notes. So you can see that information there and reach out to her to find out more. Um, if today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone that you care about, because these are conversations families don't usually have until it's frankly too late. Planning doesn't eliminate emergencies, but it does eliminate confusion, conflict, and certainly unnecessary court involvement.
And chaos, like you said.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We want clarity, not chaos. Thank
Right.
you again, Kelly. I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much for having me. This is fun.
Of course. And to you, our listeners, thanks for listening again to Estate Planning Nightmares and How to Avoid Them. I'm John Braddock. And remember, your life is your legacy. So plan ahead and make it a great day.